upfront cost, it's a lot lower, but when you look at it over time, you've probably spent so much more money on this fast fashion than you have actual quality clothing. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm holding a mic this time around because I might try to turn this into a podcast if I can figure that out. And if you're listening via podcast, good for you and good for me because I figured it out and you're here listening to it, so that's a win-win. Today, I really want to talk about why we cannot seem to actually quit fast fashion. It is this mind-blowing concept where so many people are aware how awful it is for human rights, women laborers, and also the environment, and they're still shrugging it off as like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I know it's terrible, but I'm still going to do it anyway, which then obviously makes you think like that person is a complete asswipe, which is like kind of fair to think. But I'm all for people understanding their consumption habits, healing from them because they understand them, like being able to put names to things and be like, this is why I do this. And from here on out, I can choose differently if I have the discipline and the willpower to. And I don't know, I just think this is an important topic to talk about because I think we really have shown the light on the fact that, like, yes, fast fashion is really horrible, but what are we going to do about it? Like, we need to change the way we relate to it and the way we think about it. And know that it is no longer okay and it's no longer acceptable. Like, I don't necessarily feel awful for TikTokers or whoever that do thousands of dollars of Shein hauls and then people are mad at them. I don't feel bad about that. I think, like, to a degree, shame is how we learn, and maybe these people need to be shamed into not doing such a thing, or possibly they just aren't even aware. And I am definitely giving them the benefit of the doubt and thinking maybe they just don't know any better, and maybe I can help break it down for them. So I want to start back, rewind millions of years ago, like way before TikTok, okay? We as a species are hardwired for instant gratification. We are hardwired to get what we need in that moment in order to survive. So think about a small rabbit in front of a hunter versus waiting for a fat deer to come across. What they're going to do is kill the rabbit because it's there, it's available, it's instant, versus saving energy to wait for a fat deer to come across. Like, that concept was not a thing, and we were not hardwired in that way. This is where it gets really tricky, though, because we still have that evolutionary sense and need and drive and hardwire for instant gratification, but our circumstances have changed greatly to the point where we can search anything on Amazon Prime and get it at a blinding pace. Shipping is actually insane how it can go globally so fast, and things are instant in that way. And now, in terms of fashion, we have thousands of new styles being pushed out on the daily that you can get at such a cheap price and then shipped to you within a week. It just evolutionarily, like, we were never ever thinking we'd be faced with those sort of circumstances of excess. Truthfully, we have so much more that we are able to consume, and when it's cheapened and it's at this price, it also is so much harder to resist and pass up because we're wired to need it and get it now because we don't know when it's going to come next. Unfortunately, marketers and companies and businesses are preying on this evolutionary hardwiring and able to make so much in profit because it's not something we're going to unlearn in a week, a year, 5 years, 10 years. This is something that is deeply embedded in, like, our reptilian instincts, like at the bottom of our brain stems is where this comes from. So they have an edge on the fact that they know that they can take that and then sell it back to us by saying, hey, get this trend while it lasts. I know you've probably fallen for it, and I have too, those 15% off for 24 hours or 48 hours or $10 off for the next 48 hours, like those emails. Sign up for SMS and you get $10 in credit, but only for 48 hours, or the big sales, 40% off today only, or free shipping with a purchase of $35. Like those sorts of psychological tactics, because at their basis, that is what they are psychological. They work. They work because if it's not there, that's when we become insecure, versus taking the stance of, I want it, but I don't need it. What it feels like is that we need these things, we need these objects, we need these possessions because we're hardwired to like take, hunt, and gather, okay? So it is definitely something that we're coming to terms with in a way that we never, ever thought we would. And it's not something, I don't think evolutionarily, that we should kind of evolve out of, and it's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. I mean, if you ever took a course in evolution or basic biology, you know that evolution happens over generations and generations and generations, and this is something very new. I want to say since like the 2000s and globalization and the internet being widespread, like this is really only in the past 20 years or so, 25 years or so, has this kind of access and instant gratification really been a huge issue. And also, we love new things. We love the shiny new object. We see it with dogs with new toys. That's what they gravitate towards. We've also seen it with men on Love Island. They love the new women that walk through the door. We're no different. So when we have these super extreme micro trends that pump out, whether it's on your social media page or it's on your Shop For You page or it's on whatever landing page of any trendy website that you land on, and it's new, it's exciting. And that's not your fault. That is something that these companies, influencers, whoever, they know that we want to see something new, fresh, invigorating, and they play on that, and they want you to buy into it, which they're doing a really good job at. And I just think like the consumer does need more accountability in this conversation, because we can talk about the marketers and the producers and the influencers or whatever knowing how to play their game, but if we don't know how to play defense of some sort, we're just over in the corner with some learned helplessness, being like, oh, well, they're gonna sell it to me anyway, so I have to put in my credit card info and shipping information and buy it. What? No, you don't. It's definitely this trick of the mind of, well, they're going to get my money anyway, so why not just fork it over because that style is new and it's really cute. That brings me to my next point, which is that these styles not only are new, but they are extremely cheap. I'm talking pennies on the dollar cheap. And that also adds to the instant gratification. That adds to the easy access. That adds to the no barrier to entry. Anyone can shop these styles and they can have them super, super cheap, very, very quickly, and wear them the next week. And obviously, different economic situations call for different shopping patterns and behaviors, but I do think if you are in a more privileged stance where you can buy clothing that is going to last you longer and is a bit more worthwhile, then you should be doing so. You should not be hauling hundreds and hundreds and possibly even thousands of dollars worth of clothing that is purely polyester and is going to fall apart in a week. It's not making sense to me, and it's something that you also know you're contributing to because you know you're going to wear these clothes once or twice before you throw them out. They were never meant to last. They were never made to last. They were never produced of such high quality clothing that they are going to last you. And you know that, and you are willingly buying into that because you want the newest thing. You're chasing that high of that instant gratification, and the newness is what's intoxicating. Also, on another point, shopping feels good. Shopping does feel good. It releases dopamine. So when people talk about retail therapy, it's a real thing, and they mean it. And it's something that I think we should also dive into a little deeper and really look at this cycle of this newness that comes out, and then from there it's so cheap and you can buy it and you can have it and it feels good. It feels better than saving your money because you get that little hit, you get that little release of like, ooh, I have this new thing that's mine and I bought it with my own money. But at the same time, you're forking over your hard-earned cash for clothing pieces that are not going to last you beyond 5 wears. Guaranteed. They will not last you that long. They're either going to rip, tear, pill, come apart at the seams. They're going to shrink. They're going to just wear. It's just, they're too thin. It's not worth what you're spending on it time and time again. And this is something I wish people would understand, is that investing in your clothing pieces, the price you get per wear is actually lower than the price you get per wear of a fast fashion piece, for example. With fast fashion, yeah, upfront cost, it's a lot lower, but when you look at it over time, you've probably spent so much more money on this fast fashion than you have actual quality clothing. But the instant gratification, the super low costs, and the novelty is all why it's so hard to quit fast fashion. That is just a recipe for disaster, truthfully, in terms of the labor that goes behind it and the environmental implications. And I bet so many people don't even understand or wonder or curious about where these clothes come from and how they're made so cheaply. And that's really a huge issue here, because people are making these clothing pieces. People are sewing these. It's not a production line. It's not a robot. It's not a 3D printer. It's not a trained mechanical arm. It is actual human people. And most of the time, it's women. It's women seeking their way out of poverty who are then being paid at a slave wage labor. So essentially, that $5.99 nice, cute, trendy little top that you got was made in a sweatshop. Not really a factory, not really a manufacturing production facility, but essentially a place where people are paid abysmally low prices for their work. And that is slave labor. That is what we call slavery. It's more of a modern day take because, okay, they are still being paid, but it's not to the point where they can afford a nice life. They're not paid a living wage. It's something that they're trapped to do, and they're working 16 hours. Like, we've all heard stories of Amazon where people are peeing in bottles, truckers specifically, because they don't want to take a break and risk an hourly wage. If people are feeling so forced to have to urinate on the go and not afford themselves a bathroom break, that tells you they're not being paid enough, because they wouldn't. Okay, I'm back. My camera died. So as I was saying, these workers, whether they be Amazon or whoever, shouldn't be worried about losing their hourly wage because they're taking a bathroom break. That is just obviously a glaring example that they're being paid a poverty wage, essentially. And I just really want to propose this in a way that makes you think about where your clothes are coming from. Have you ever truly wondered why something is so cheap? Have you? Because truthfully, that right there tells you a lot about what you're paying for. If you're paying $8, $9, $10 for a skirt, I just don't think that, like, it doesn't compute that is going to last you a long time, and it doesn't compute that it came from a good quote-unquote place, that it came from a place where production is of quality, where people are not neglected, overworked, and underpaid. That's just my take. I don't know. There's even research that Skims workers in Bangladesh get paid $98 a month. So think about that. Think about your Skims that you love so dearly. So obviously there's a huge human rights issue with fast fashion, but there's also an environmental issue. I feel like we might be well aware of this. If not, I'd love to break it down for you. So a lot of these clothes are made out of things that are oil byproducts. And I didn't know this until fairly recently, until actually being on like a sustainable clothing journey, slow living journey. Things like nylon, acrylic, polyester, those are all byproducts of oil. And they're very cheap to produce because oil is obviously the main thing people are using as an energy source. And those sorts of materials are just kind of like, oh, we're not going to use this anyway. We're going to sell it for cheap to manufacturers. And that's where fashion manufacturers and production facilities will pick it up and then respin it into yarn to make t-shirts or whatever the hell else they're making. But on top of that, you have to also keep in mind that the fossil fuel industry is literally being subsidized by government. So that is another reason why it is also so cheap to use things like polyester, acrylic, nylon in their clothing, because it's coming to them for a ridiculous price. I'm sure big oil doesn't want it anymore, because what are they going to do with it? And they're already being paid for their oil. And so this is just like a side hustle for them, like a big, huge corporation side hustle. And that just grinds my gears, because it does make it very difficult and way less enticing for fashion companies to want to move to organic materials like cotton, hemp, silk, even if it's made organically without any animal cruelty. And these sorts of materials are just obviously more durable quality. They're natural fibers. They're good on your skin. They're not going to cause cancer unless obviously they're treated with pesticides, but that's an entirely different tangent. That would mean they're not organic in the first place, if you're following. Anyway, so these materials are subsidized. They're then sold off to the fashion industry. And the fashion industry, you know what they can do? A 60% polyester, 40% cotton blend. So you'll see a lot of blends and a lot of fabrics. And what that does is kind of enables them to use their higher quality products in a longer lifespan. They're not using 100% cotton in one t-shirt. They're only using 40%, but they can still claim it's a cotton t-shirt at the end of the day, even though it has mostly polyester. And that's kind of how they're able to cut costs and save money on their end, along with the obviously deplorable treatment of their workers and the lack of payment to said workers. But it's also just the cost of materials in the first place. Now, I've spoken about this before in a previous video of are recycled material clothes actually good for the environment, and touched on this point a little bit, that these plastics that essentially we're wearing they're not good for the environment, because what they do as you're wearing them and as you're washing them is that they shed off microplastics into the water stream, and those obviously end up in the ocean and the fish and our rainwater. Like, we are consuming microplastics at an alarming rate. They are found in fetuses. It is scary. It is quite alarming that this is the reality we now live in. And although, yes, it is alarming, I still find that there's hope, because we are in control of this narrative to some degree. And that's why I don't want the consumers to play helpless and have learned helplessness and be like, oh, well, it's going to happen anyway. It's not. Like, we are driving the demand for these sorts of products. So, different tangent. Anyway, back to the environment. So, obviously, the materials that they're produced with in the first place are bad. That's it. Bad, not good. That's it. That's all you really need to know. And then on top of that, we are producing so much. I want to touch on the point that I made earlier of that we're only consuming these clothes to be worn 5 times tops. Like, I really, truly am curious of anyone that has bought a fast fashion, trendy style and has worn it more than 5 times. And I specified trendy because what they do is they create something upwards of like 52 micro trends a year. Obviously, there are only 52 weeks in a year, but for you to have an entirely new wardrobe every week of the year, just think per person how much clothing has to be produced for that to even be a fact for some people. It's actually mind-blowing, and it's disgusting at the end of the day. I really don't think that is in any way, shape, or form a necessity of life. Of life on Earth, you do not need a new wardrobe every single week. Anyway, these materials are obviously bad for the environment, and they're also hugely polluting because of how much is being made. If they're bad while you're wearing them, they're gonna be even worse in a landfill or inundating countries that accept, quote unquote, these donations. They really don't accept these donations. They'll be penalized if they don't accept these textiles, because what's happening, they'll be penalized in the form of like sanctions and tariffs when doing imports and exports and trading for other goods. So if they don't accept these donations, as we're calling them, they will be penalized in a different way, shape, or form that's going to hurt their overall economy. So what's happening is they're taking these clothing, textile materials that are fully inundating these areas, flooding these areas, because we can't possibly even fill the landfills with them with how much is being thrown out. So they're being pushed out into these areas. They're harming the environment in a way, and then also harming the coast because they're sitting out there on the coastline being washed away to sea. On top of that, some producers will simply burn excess stock. Yes, they will burn polyester. That is the same thing as burning oil and like producing carbon emissions in that way. So basically, you're being ripped off by fast fashion because they're cutting their materials with cheap plastic and still charging you top dollar. Food for thought. It is mind-blowing to see the overlap between big oil and fast fashion, or just the fashion industry in general, and how one subsidized industry will feed into another because it's cheap and they're going to make more money that way. I do think it's really despicable, and I do think we need to hold our companies and corporations and governments to a higher standard, and we can't be a helpless consumer that thinks we're just at the whim of higher powers that be, because to some degree we put them there. Okay, and I think we really need to be cognizant of that fact and take matters into our own hands and continue pushing for change, because it's the only way anything is going to happen. I think you can start today by proposing to not buy any new clothes for a week, for a month, for the rest of the year even, if you really feel so, moved. I will say it's not easy. Obviously, I am a previous fast fashion lover, and I can say that loud and proud that I've turned a new leaf and have become someone who's way more focused on sustainable styles, slow fashion, reusing what I have, secondhand, clothing swaps, flea markets, you name it. I probably already do it, and I love it. It is definitely a different kind of self-expression. But it's also a challenge, and with challenges and constraints comes creativity, and I think it's a beautiful way to just continue expressing who I am with someone else's old clothes. I just think that's really cool, actually. But a lot of, can you not do that right now? Okay, cat ASMR. Okay, she stopped. At its core, fast fashion is meant to be tossed out as quickly as it was produced and consumed. That way you keep consuming more and more and more and more and more, and these companies keep lining their pockets with polyester dollars. So now we're at the part of the video where I try to help you actually quit fast fashion and tell you what's it going to take. Number one is going to be discipline. I think that's very important, is to not give in to the instant gratification. It's so much easier said than done because, again, we are hardwired for instant gratification. But if you have something on your wish list, maybe it's a Chanel bag. That's about a few $1,000s, okay? You're definitely going to have to save up for that. If that's something you actually want and are striving for to achieve, you're going to have to save your coin, baby girl. I don't know what else to tell you. So have some discipline, set yourself a spending plan or a budget that you have for clothes. I'm not telling you to completely cut it off and restrict yourself entirely. It's definitely going to have to happen in stages, but you need to take steps actively to reduce your consumption. I think that's number one. Maybe find instant gratification and buying organic vegetables instead. I don't know, crazy thought. But seriously, buying less is definitely the number one way, and just having the discipline to not give into that instant gratification is going to be huge. Secondly, kind of on that point of setting yourself a budget, just buy better quality clothing. It's definitely more bang for your buck. You're going to get way more use out of it. Have your essentials that you don't need to rebuy time and time again. Just have really quality clothing that you trust, know, and love is going to last you. That way you're not spending so much money. And I would obviously recommend materials that are not oil byproduct, just so they're not shedding microplastics into the water stream, and that way you actually feel good in what you're wearing, your clothing has energy. If it comes from the earth, it's just going to have a much more harmonious energy to it versus if it's an oil byproduct that's gone through so much extraction and production and refining, like these sorts of industrial mechanical energies that are very high in frequency, or sorry, not high in, like low in energy, but have like a very crazy, chaotic kind of frequency to them. This might sound like mumbo jumbo, but everything has a frequency, everything has an energy. I can get more into that later, but buying better quality clothing of like natural materials is just going to feel better for you, and you're going to be spending less in the long run, and you're still able to afford yourself little bits of spending without going overboard and buying hundreds of dollars of fast fashion pieces. You still get your hit, but you don't hurt the environment. Put that on a t-shirt, but not a fast fashion one. This next one is definitely more of a specific call to action, and that is to practice gratitude and mindfulness for what you already have. I feel as if the fast fashion cycle makes us hate everything that's in our wardrobe, so you then continue to buy more. But if you have a good hold on your style identity and you understand what pieces you love to wear, what makes you look good, have gratitude for that, and then I'm sure you're going to be less inclined to buy more because you feel satiated, you feel full, you feel grateful for a full closet, that you have more than enough and you have more than enough clothing pieces to wear. If you don't and you feel like you have nothing to wear, you could be a victim of the trend cycles, which is unfortunate, but is by design, so don't beat yourself up about it, but you can do better. I would also turn off pop-up blockers for when you visit websites. That way you're not met with the 15% off next 48 hours only kind of thing. And just generally practicing staying away from flash sales, flash deals, super discounts, one day only discounts, putting things on a wish list. And if you really truly want it in 48 hours or can't stop thinking about it for a week, then allow yourself to buy it. But giving yourself some space and time between when you want an item to when you actually purchase an item is definitely a really great way to kind of curb this consuming behavior of just endless, mindless consumption. If you give yourself time to think about it and you're grateful for what you already have, 9 times out of 10 you probably won't purchase it, or you'll even forget about it within the 48 hours. This is a really big one for me, and I find that I only truly have purchases on my wish list that are something that's like more of like a dream thing for me. I don't really wish to have the newest, trendiest pair of pants, but I do wish to have like some nice luxury authenticated pieces that I want to add as staples to my wardrobe and give some really good love to. I also want to say that reforming and rewiring and reshaping your consumption patterns and behaviors is going to take patience, and it is going to take time. Obviously, this is not going to happen overnight where you just stop buying anything every time you're met with some sort of enticing deal or some cute new micro trendy style. It's going to take time, and I want you to be gentle with yourself and understand that. But I think by clicking on this video and even wanting to understand why it's an issue in the first place is a really big step. And I know I can be like very snarky with my commentary and just like, oh, well, you can do better. But at the end of the day, it's because I truly believe in humanity, y'all. I really do. Maybe I'm a hopeless romantic, but I truly do believe in the good in everyone. And I just think that we need a little bit more time with ourselves and patience and understanding that we are whole, entire human beings and we are good enough the way we are. And we don't need the micro trends of fashion and beauty to fill the void, essentially. And that's truly where I'm coming from. I do think being kind to yourself, being patient, getting to know yourself, reconnecting with your style, what you like to wear, not what you're being told to wear and programmed to wear, is going to go a long way. And you'll be able to take like a basic t-shirt and elevate it to your style of a good quality one, obviously, versus needing to repurchase one every 4 to 5 times a year and just keep repurchasing the same white t-shirt that you could just have one really nice one of. So I want you to take your time, digest this information, rewatch it if you have to, share to a friend if you want to hold each other accountable. Be like, hey, you and me, we're not going to buy anything for 2 weeks. And see what happens. If one of you caves, maybe you have to buy the other one coffee. Make it a bet. I don't know. Gamify it if you must, okay? I'm just really on this wave of we need to consume less. We need to produce less. Like, if this planet truly has any shot, and I think we can do it. Like I said, I used to be an avid shopper, hauler, whatever you want to call it. And I've really changed my tune and changed my ways, and I feel a lot more satisfied and fulfilled with my spending. I'm able to travel more. I'm able to see friends and family more often. I'm able to attend important events. I'm able to also show up confidently and not feel like I'm underdressed for the space that I'm occupying. I just do feel much more confident as a person and a lot more satisfied in my overall life now that I'm not spending money on these sorts of things. So that is kind of it for this video. If you guys like these kind of topics, let me know down below any else that you would want me to talk about. I have a few on the back burner, but this one was really pressing because I just watched Remake's documentary, Brandy Hellville, and it also goes into a really deep dive of corporations and companies being kind of bad people and us still supporting them as consumers, but then also the fast fashion, human rights, and environmental impact of it all. I think it's a really great watch. If you liked this video, definitely go watch that one. But yeah, I'm curious, are you trying any new ways to curb your consumption behavior? I would love to know. Those were my kind of tips and tricks and my tough love advice on how to move past your fast fashion addiction. I hope I helped. If you like this video, stick around. There's going to be more at the end for you to see. Until then, don't forget to be kind to yourself, others, and the planet. See you next time. Bye.